governor as one of our supporters. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
It's my honor to be doing this today. I spent 8 years in Minnesota, big hockey fan. But let's give a warm Mason City welcome to Governor Tim Pawlenty.
Coming out, we really appreciate it. I'm glad to be back in Iowa. I just left my house in Minnesota a few hours ago. My wife Mary sends her greetings. She was in New Hampshire last week campaigning. She's going to be back with us in Iowa in the coming days, and very grateful for her. But you know, like all spouses or significant others, she can tell you some good advice. Sometimes it can be a little tough. When I was first thinking about running for governor back in 2001, I was a majority leader of the Minnesota House, and I came home. I said, honey, I don't think I'm going to run for governor. You know, I've done what I can as majority leader, Republican leader in a tough state. I said, it's time to move on. And she grabbed me by the lapels, and she said, you got to get in there. You got to fight. You got to win. Our state needs you. You're the only one who can do this. So I ran, and of course, Jesse Ventura was thinking about still running for a third term at the time, and I won against some uphill odds. And about a month into my governorship, I had to give a state of the state and a budget address and all the things that comes with being a new governor, an inaugural and the like, and so the schedule got very busy. And Mary was kind of giving me the what for one day about not being home enough. We had a little disagreement about my schedule, and I said, well, honey, I mean, don't you remember? I mean, you're the one who gave me that inspiring speech. You're the one who told me to get in there and do this. And she said, yeah, I never thought you'd do it. So the rest is history, and I was able to make some great changes for the state of Minnesota as a conservative in the land of McCarthy and Mondale and Humphrey and Wellstone, and now United States Senator Al Franken. And as Frank Sinatra would sing about New York, if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. And in Minnesota, I love my state. It's a beautiful state. But the fact of the matter is, it leans pretty hard the other way, and we were able to bring it back in a common sense conservative direction. And that's what we need for America now. About 4 years ago, we had somebody roll through Iowa named Barack Obama, who convinced the Democrats in this state that he had inspiring speeches and very fancy rhetoric. And the Democrats of Iowa sent him on his way to the presidency of the United States. And as we think about how we get out of this mess that we're in as a nation, it's important to step back and remember how we got into it. And one of the reasons we got into it is we put somebody in the Oval Office and made somebody president of the United States who wasn't ready for the job. He had been a community organizer. He had been a college professor. He had been in the United States Senate long enough to have a cup of coffee before it got cold. And then he became president of the United States. He didn't have the background and the experience and the results be ready for president of the United States. And as importantly, he had a vision or a direction for the country that was just wrong and misguided. You remember he came through town and gave these soaring speeches and made these big promises, and now we know they've almost all been unfulfilled. Now, I won't go through the whole list, but let me give you a few by way of example. He came through Iowa. In fact, on the night of the Iowa caucuses, he reminded Americans that our health care system is broken, and he said he was going to work with Republicans to fix it. As a candidate, he was against the individual mandate, and he said he was going to focus on cost containment to make health care more affordable for our nation. Then he went to Washington, D.C. and did just the opposite. He crammed down the throats of the country one of the worst pieces of legislation in the modern history of the country, one of the most partisan pieces of legislation in the country, and it's going to make our health care system more expensive and lower in quality, not better. Obamacare should be repealed in its entirety.
Yes.
And you also know that one of the other big issues right now is spending and an out-of-control federal government. And in March of 2009, a few months after he became president, after he knew full well the full magnitude of the problems of our country economically, he told the American people he would cut the deficit in half, the budget deficit in half, during his first term. Now, when George Bush left the presidency, the deficit for our country was about $500 billion, the one-year deficit. You know what it is now? It's about $1.5 trillion. He didn't cut it in half, he tripled it. And then the list goes on, but then one other one that's timely in these challenging economic times. Remember the ridiculous stimulus bill that they wanted passed? He said if you don't pass the stimulus bill, unemployment could go as high as 8%. 8%. It went all the way up to 10%. In fact, it's still 9%. So, and the list goes on and on and on. But importantly today, in the wake of what you saw yesterday, one of the most important issues facing this country is we got to get America moving again. There are people all over this country wondering about our future. Some wondering whether our future is going to be as bright as our past. There's a sense of discouragement across America these days. There's even now open discussion about whether America's lost its national identity, whether we've lost our national compass settings. These are reflections not just of some challenging times, they're reflections of failed leadership. We have a president who's now presided over gas prices that have almost doubled on his watch, nearly $4 a gallon gas. We have crushing levels of unemployment, and all that means in terms of insecurity and instability and worry amongst our fellow citizens and families, and what that does to diminish and discourage hope. We have a federal government that seems absolutely out of control, and a president who just doesn't seem to have a clue about what to do about it. So we got to get this country moving again, and you know that one of the things we have to do is get the economy moving again. So I gave the most specific, the most aggressive, boldest, pro-growth, pro-investment economic plan of any candidate in this race by far. I gave it at the University of Chicago, Barack Obama's former place of employment. It's all available online at timpawlenty.com if you want to read the whole thing. But here's the short version of it. Number one, listen to the job providers. Listen to the people who want to start a business and grow a business. By the way, there are 6 million businesses in the United States of America or so, and 5.9 million of those 6 million have 500 employees or less. So almost the entire economy in this country is smaller and medium-sized businesses. And when you talk to the people who'd like to grow a business like that or start a business like that and provide jobs, they all say the same thing. Get the government off my back. And so my economic plan addresses that concern. It takes business tax rates from 35% down to 15%. It takes them from one of the worst in the developed world to one of the best. But in exchange for that, we clean out and make it a flat tax rate, clean out all the special exemptions and credits and deductions that businesses get, so their ability to compete and succeed in the marketplace depends on their ability to connect to customers, not on their ability to get a good lobbyist and connect to a member of Congress. It also takes the individual tax rates from 6 down to 2, and we eliminate taxation on interest, on dividends, on capital gains, on the estate tax. There's a whole discussion in there about what it's going to take to get spending under control. We'll say more about that in just a minute. Having regulations that are more pro-job and pro-business in this country. And by the way, one of the things we should do in that regard is sunset all regulations so they don't go on forever. And if there are going to be any new regulations, make the Congress vote on them one more time, up or down, before they go into effect, so that real people who understand the real impacts of these regulations, who understand what's really going to do to the economy, have one more crack at their elected representatives before those regulations go into effect. And then we need to have an energy policy in this country that's going to lower lower price by increasing supply. The way to do that is more American energy. And that means all of the above and all that that implies. And then finally, we got to get spending under control. As we sit here this morning, if you're here for an hour, the federal government will spend approximately $144 million they don't have. And they do that every hour, every day, every week, every month. It is absolutely out of control. And the debt deal that they just put together a week or two ago hardly changes the picture at all. It would be as if Alex came to me and I was a doctor and he had a fever. Well, if he has a fever for an hour or two, that's one thing. But if he has a fever for weeks on end, it's not about the fever. You don't just give him an aspirin. You got to fix the underlying problem. And the symptom of the fever is something more serious. In this case, the debt ceiling is a symptom of something much more serious. And we can't just pop a financial aspirin. We We have to fix the real problem. So when I announced my campaign in Iowa, I said it's going to be the Jack Nicholson A Few Good Men election. You know, we're going to have the time to tell the truth. The American people can handle the truth if we're willing to tell it to them, and not only tell them the truth, but show them the way forward in a positive and constructive way. So I said, look, we're going to have to tell hard truths everywhere to get out of this hole, including in Iowa. And that means we're going to have to tell folks in Iowa that it's time, given our budget challenges, to phase out the ethanol subsidies. I've been as big of a fan of renewable energy as there is, but over time, we'll do it fairly. We're going to have to phase that out. And I'm not just picking on ethanol, and I'm not just picking on Iowa. We're going to have to phase out many or most of the subsidies in the country. We've got that big of a problem.